So imagine that you're away with your family on a trip and someone behind the scenes impersonating to be you. And they not only list your house for sale, but they also sell and close on your home. And you have no idea this has happened up until you get back from vacation, only to realize that another family is occupying your home and they claim it was sold to them. This is the story of a recent Toronto fraud story that's going absolutely viral in the news. We're going to not only dissect this article, but we're also going to bring on board Toronto's top real estate lawyer to not only share their advice, but to give us some insight and tips as to how we can prevent this from happening to you as a home buyer going forward. Stay tuned. So while we wait for our friend Ahad to join the call, let's go over the article. If by chance you have not seen this article, then allow me to present it to you. I'm sure there's very few people who have not seen or read this article. Toronto homeowners returned from trip to find out they'd been impersonated and their house is sold. So the owners of a Toronto home got the surprise of a lifetime when they discovered that the property had been fraudulently listed and sold by two people impersonating them while away on a business trip. Not only was this property listed for sale, the new homeowners also took possession of the property. The property was listed via a real estate agent. The buyers put an offer on the property, they bought the property, and they also closed and took ownership of the property. This is the article that we're going to go over today. Naturally, it has left many homeowners and home buyers scared, and they want to know how to prevent this in the real estate transaction. There's a ton of theories that I'm hearing. It could be insurance fraud. Maybe the real estate agent was in on it. I am unfamiliar as to what happened exactly, but in this video, we'll definitely go over things you can do to protect yourself from this happening to you. Mohammed, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Moaeez. I'm really appreciative of it.
Buddy, it's our pleasure. This is not going to be an easy call. I'm going to pick your head on this call. So let's dive right into it. You know the article we're talking about today. What I want to know is when this article was brought to your attention, what were your preliminary thoughts about it?
I was just having flashbacks to preventative lectures that had happened with title insurers and what they warn you to look out for in terms of fraud like this, because it seems to me that this might have been a fraud where they were using maybe fake IDs or something to that effect to pretend that they were somebody else, ideally the people who are actually the sellers of the property.
That's what the article is saying as well. There's different wordings in every article, but one of them is saying that the property was listed and it is standard practice to showcase your ID to a realtor to verify everything is legitimate in that sense of ID. And then the property is listed after that. It's quite intricate for that matter of fact, but apparently that had already created an ID to kind of replicate the original owners, right? Now, this is my first time ever hearing of this during my time selling real estate. You've been doing long before than I have. You have way more experience than I do. How common is this?
So fraud in and of itself is one of the most common issues for claims when it comes to real estate law, right? Because fraud when it comes to mortgages or fraud when it comes to essentially obtaining funds illegitimately through real estate, because there's such large volumes of cash moving around. So it is pretty common, and they tend to target people by putting fast deadlines and things like that. So there are preventative measures that you can follow, but it is, I don't want to say it happens all the time like it's rampant, but that it does happen and you should be aware of it.
So mortgage fraud, we've heard a lot of, especially over the past 6 months. There was a lot of articles kind of exposing that part of it, right? How often have you seen this where the seller's identity was taken and a house was sold without their knowledge?
Personally, I'm happy to say that it hasn't happened to me, which I'm really glad about. But in a lot of the training videos where we do, because we have to do continuing professional development as well, just like with realtors, you get specialists who come in who are title insurers and they're underwriters, and they tell us a lot of stories. Like there was one where, they didn't check the ID at all because it was a woman, and that gentleman, who was clearly a gentleman, was dressed up as a woman to pretend to be that person in the ID, right? So there's funny stories like that happen, and it's just, I think it's more rampant now because of a lot of the virtual identification process that's happening. You're not seeing people in person. But yeah, it does happen, and you'd be surprised.
That's a good point. We had to make it a habit to view IDs in person. During COVID, it became acceptable to do it virtually and take other steps to kind of ensure that everything was by the books per se when it came to ID, right? Now,
Mhm.
everyone watching this is pretty much scared, buyers or sellers. They don't know how this happened, but more importantly, they need to know how to stop this from happening. So what steps, let's begin with the steps the seller can take from preventing this from happening.
So once again, I just want to start right off by saying, as I said before, it is common in the sense that it does happen, but if we're looking at a percentile basis, this is not something that's rampant, right? I've closed over 2,500 deals in the last 7 years, and I have not come across this, or with a few times where it seemed a little bit off. When I asked a few questions, that person just disappeared, right? So, I don't think people should be that fearful, but at the end of the day, there are steps you can take. And I think the first and most important step as a buyer is that you need to make sure that you're hiring the right kind of people, because the right kind of people are going to ask you the right kind of questions and make sure that they look out for red flags that, through their experience, they'll say, okay, well, this person, it shows that they bought it 3 months ago and now they're selling again, or it's like no, we're not actually seeing this person face to face, or the realtors never met their own client, things like that, right? So those red flags will, with an experienced person who knows what they're doing, they'll be able to protect the buyer in that aspect.
And what about sellers? What steps can sellers take to prevent from someone completely stranger to them sell their property while they're on vacation?
I mean, well, that's a tough one, right? Part of it is that, identity fraud is identity fraud, right? I mean, people steal your SIN number and will register like a phone under your name or credit cards, right? That happens, and you can't live in fear because there's no way to protect that. You can, do your due diligence for, blacking out things before you throw it, But at the end of the day, when somebody's making a fake ID or pretending to be you, I think one of the forms of protection a seller can do, especially a seller who has no mortgage on their home, because we find that a lot of the targeting that happens with sellers who have paid off homes, because for obvious reasons, a lot of money there. Is to put something like a HELOC or a home equity line of credit on it. Now, you don't actually have to take any money out of there, but if anyone were to see your property, they'd see like it's a $500,000 or $750,000 loan. It doesn't show that this is how much is remaining on it. And that in and of itself would be a form of protection, because anybody who's looking at your property to sell would have to contact the bank. They would need certain documents from you. And so it just makes it a little bit harder for the fraudster.
Talk to me about, so two-part question. What is title insurance and why do we have title insurance in place for buyers?
So title insurance, essentially, the easiest answer is to say this: to actually do due diligence on a property to protect a buyer takes a lot longer than some closings allow us to take. Some closings will be like, hey, let's close this in 2 weeks. And the bank requires things like your survey to make sure that the boundaries are there. And that in and of itself is like a $1,500 expense. They require you to get tax certificates and utility certificates to make sure that, everything has been paid for, so there's no liens on it, because those things can be a lien even if they're not on title, because later on when they're unpaid, they're applied against the title. And so title insurance essentially is to protect you from certain things where the title insurer essentially says, hey, look, you know what? You don't have to do these searches. And if something comes up later and we told you not to do those searches, you will not be liable for it. So in the case of something, when we're talking about this type of fraudulent situation, by you as a buyer using the money of the bank and your own money to buy this property, and you and your lawyer, you guys have done all your due diligence, they don't find that there was any sort of shady business on the buyer's end, they will essentially, underwrite your liability, right? So that is why it's such a good protection, because, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and as much verification we can do, fraudsters are always getting smarter and smarter. And if you miss something, the buyer's the one that ends up paying the price.
And you want to protect them. It's a
Exactly.
massive price as well. It's
Yeah.
years of savings, and you're
Mhm.
also taking a 30, 35-year mortgage. You're committing to this. It's vital to have. Mohammed, thank you so much for hopping on this call with us today. I'm sure our folks watching this video will have a ton of questions for you. Where is the best way for them to reach out either on this matter to get more insight and to even use your legal services when it comes to closing on the real estate transactions?
Well, the best way is really just to reach out through our website. It's www.rathorebaig.com. You can call us, but usually I think email or electronic communications is the easiest for everyone. You can go on there, leave us a message. If my staff can assist you, they'll usually set up a time for me to call you, and then we can always discuss via free consultation. And at the end of the day, any competent real estate lawyer can help you. But check out our reviews and talk to me and see if that's something that we can help you with.
And you guys are very transparent too. You're the only folks that I know almost in any business that have the rates on the website, which is usually question number one, even on mine, that how much do they charge for a transaction? And you've cut that part of, you kept it very transparent because your reviews speak for themselves, right? So guys, I'll keep everything in the description below. Mohammed, thank you once again for your time. We'll catch you soon.
No, thank you. Honestly, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to making more of these videos with you in the future.
Awesome. Chat soon, buddy.
Take care.